Hey everyone, this is Iron Torch 20, and we welcome you to episode XCIV of my immediate reaction for Samurai Jack. And this is easily the most intense episode of the series we've gotten so far. So let's go ahead and dive into it. It starts off with Jack floating down the river after getting stabbed by one of the daughters of Aku, which happened in the last episode. And then you see that he actually goes a really long distance. And also, that was not really a good spot to get stabbed, pretty close to the liver. Or that might have been the liver, I don't know. But either way, I do really like the stunning visuals here. And one of the big ones you got was with him floating down the river on a log, and then this frog jumps up. And then you hear the frog scream, "They're coming!" Which is, of course, referring to the daughters of Aku chasing down Jack. Which happens eventually, but not yet. You get to see this one sequence of him wandering in the woods, and for this part I couldn't really tell if it was a dream sequence or if it was a hallucination or if it was something else. But you did get to see that dark samurai stalking him and him bleeding profusely, which I didn't know how much of it was real and how much of it was just him hallucinating. But then you get to see all this blood, and then he eventually ends up crawling into a cave, and then he has another argument with this part of his consciousness. And what I do like is the exaggerated facial expressions they decided on this Jack. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's definitely something you should watch. But what he does say is, or what the hallucinated version of Jack says, is that he's survived worse, and really all this, the way he's been feeling has nothing to do with that actual cut. It has to do with that person he killed. And I guess they admit that Jack didn't really kill anyone until then. Which, I mean, I still don't believe that's true since the Princess and the Bounty Hunters, but I mean, if you want to argue with me in the comments, then go ahead. But anyway, back to that. You also get to see this bloodied up wolf going into the cave too, which I thought was kind of odd, seeing as how there are wolves that, or there was a wolf in the last episode that ended up dying. But I'm not really sure if he actually did die or not, but it's heavily implied that he did. But either way, I think wolves are actually a pretty unique theme in this series, or in this particular season of Samurai Jack. Since you have the whole lone wolf thing, and I guess that's the way, like, Jack's been surviving alone and fighting alone and whatnot. Even though the Scotsman actually is supposed to show up in this season, but I don't know, we'll just save the surprise, I guess. Or I guess that's what the writers are doing. But either way, once he's in the cave, you get to see this sequence, or this dream sequence, of him playing with these figurines while traveling with his parents. Or this flashback of him traveling with his parents. And then you see these assassins who killed all the Emperor's guards and then challenged him. And then what I do like is you have the Emperor's whole speech of your decisions and actions led you to this path. And then he said you can either leave now or stay here and face your destiny. And then he ends up fucking up all the assassins and then ends up killing them. So then, let's see, what you also see is that, or just the way the wolf ends up licking his wounds and then ends up healing himself faster. That is actually true, by the way. Excuse me. But either way, one other part you see after that sequence with the wolf, you see the Emperor cleaning a lot of blood off of Jack's face, and that was the blood of the other guys. And then what he says to Jack when he was a kid was the whole thing about how your decisions you make and the actions you do are a reflection of who you are, and that you can't really hide from yourself. Definitely good advice to hang on to down the road. let's see, with that said, it did go into commercial break after that, and then afterwards we see the daughters of Aku trying to chase down Jack, and then they track him down, or they track the blood, they follow the trail of blood and the river and whatnot. So they take care of that pretty easily. But once they got to the close location of where Jack was, they end up seeing, or there was this really intense music that was playing. And I also do like how the way the writers even work the music in. You have this really intense music when they're trying to find the trail as to where Jack was, and then you hear this branch break, and then all of a sudden the music just cuts. So I think that's a really nice touch on the writer's part, and also the animators and the directors too. But either way, what happens next is that they end up finding a deer, and then they also end up finding a male deer, so male and female deer. And this is actually where the immaturity of the daughters of Aku come in, because they don't really know like how to react to this, and they don't really know like how to perceive it. And I also did like how they thought the deer was like some minion of Aku or something, just because it had like the same horns, or just because of the deer's antlers and whatnot. How they somehow thought it was something or some symbolism of Aku. It really goes to show you like how little actual world experience they had outside of trying to kill Jack and being trained to try to kill Jack. So I mean, I think in this episode, maturity is definitely a theme here. So either way, they do end up tracking down Jack to this area, or the snowy area, and then Jack gives them the same speech that the Emperor gave those assassins, that they can, or that their decisions and actions got them to this point, and they can either leave or stay and face their destiny. And then that was also kind of given away in the trailer too. So then after that, they fight in the snow, and you do get, and then Jack ends up surprising them, getting the early jump on them, and then takes out two of the daughters of Aku with spears, which are pretty accurately well thrown, and then just nails them right in the heart. Definitely pretty violent part. And then he ends up doing really well against them right away. He ends up taking out one with Sai, and then ends up stabbing another one, so that only left 3 to go. And then he ends up swiping the kanabo from one of those women, and then ends up fighting with that. And then he was doing well, but then fatigue started setting in from him starving, and him, let's see, also going to, let's see, and also from him losing a lot of blood, so there was that too. But then he ends up getting tired, and then just ends up running. So then what he tries to do is he tries to lure them out to this one tree branch following a cliff. So then he decides to drop the kanabo, and then just fight bare fist, or just decides to fight hand to hand. But then he ends up doing really well. He ends up winning here too, so he ends up throwing one of them off, and then just gets a good timing shot, and then just knocks another one right out. So then the last one ends up fighting pretty well with her chain sickle, and then ends up, let's see, they end up fighting, and then eventually Jack ends up defeating her by, okay, that's kind of distracting. But anyway, Jack ends up defeating her by using the chain to her disadvantage, and then she ends up falling just like the rest of them. And then I do like how the last one just ends up telling them off, or telling him off, but then it turns out it's not really true. The episode then ends with on kind of a cliffhanger, with Jack falling the same way they did after the branch broke. So either way, one thing I definitely I also forgot to mention was a wolf that followed Jack into the cave, and I do like how Jack and the wolf just end up making friends with each other. Like, they end up, or Jack ends up building a fire for the wolf, and then the wolf ends up getting him a chicken to eat. And then I also like, I mean, it's actually kind of a nice parallel as to how much they have in common. I mean, them just fighting alone against all these other things and, you know, coming home battered and bloodied and whatnot. I mean, this was definitely a really good episode, and this is definitely one I was looking forward to. It will be interesting to see where the next one goes, though. But also, the fight scenes for this one, unfortunately, weren't as good as the second one. But, I mean, at least they did end up dealing with the daughters of Aku, and then they end up showing just how much of a badass Jack is. But I think this episode was really more about just him rediscovering his way, and more about just him regaining his purpose, so to say. Because, I mean, the first one was really more about guilt, the second one was really more about hopelessness, but then this one was actually more about Jack overcoming those things and just dealing with the daughters of Aku, which was interesting that he was willing to kill them as easily as he was. I mean, I thought that was definitely kind of a surprise. I thought there'd be some moral conflict in there, but I don't know, apparently not. I mean, most of that stuff was already hashed out in the cave, but I guess Jack made his decision. But yeah, I'm already at 11:30 here, so hey, you know what? Come back next time for the next episode. See you next week.